inviting in your own angelic consciousness, the angelic consciousness that is you, right? That your subtle energy body that is angelic, right? Inviting that in to the sexual act, right? Inviting it into, let's get super specific, right? Let's say your partner has asked you to share pleasure, sexual pleasure, right? Oral, physical, whatever it is. One way that you could optimize and enhance and make sure that there is this frequency of love within that act is calling to your own angelic consciousness. The consciousness that is you, that shows up in service. Service to what? Service to your partner. Service with no attachment. Service with no expectation. Service for the fact of service, for the fact of love. Welcome, beautiful beings, to season 2 of the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast with your host, Harrison Ma. This podcast sets the loving intention of creating the mystical space needed to pull back the layers restricting health, alignment, and love. Now let's walk you home to your cosmic spiritual heart space. Before we continue this beautiful chat today, wonderful souls, I need to jump in here to share something really exciting. If you've been following these episodes or you've been following me on social media, you know that I am in the process of releasing my first book, Your Cosmic Love Antenna, Define, Embody, and Emit Your Unique Frequency of Love. And at the time of this episode release, pre-orders are now open. If you have been pulled to this show, if you're looking to understand the what, the how, and the why of love, if you're looking to apply some of the tools connected to your chakras, inner child, releasing religious trauma, ancestral healing, emotional release, and so much more, then this beautiful expression from my heart to yours is for you. If you are looking to channel more of your unique gifts and the divine frequency that you are, these pages will open all of this up. And if you're interested, all you need to do is go to cosmicloveantenna.com. That's cosmicloveantenna.com. And you can pre-order this book right now. If you pre-order, click on that link, put in your email, you're going to get access to some special gifts that I'm only offering to those who get in before I release it fully. These gifts are going to be some more channeled meditations, activations, and some other surprises from my heart to yours. So head over to cosmicloveantenna.com, pre-order this beautiful expression, and I can't wait to hear how it shifts your life. If you're listening to this after pre-order sales, that same link can be also used to go to the direct purchase link. Sending love, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode today. Good morning, evening, afternoon, magical souls. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to another Solo-sode, another episode of the Cosmic Love Antenna, where I, your host Harrison, set the intention to dive into a specific topic, a specific modality, healing, teaching, understanding, whatever you want to call it, to help you pull back those layers, restricting health, alignment, and love. And today's continuation of the chakra series I've been doing, the chakras and your sexual energy, is part 4. Today, talking about the heart chakra. Your heart chakra, your sexual energy, how these two things come together, and what we can do. What are some practical tools, tips, and insights and implementations we can start to move through to enhance our sexual energy? Before I get into all of that, a quick foundation here, as always. If you're watching live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, please leave your comments in the comment section as we go. I'll happily add you into this discussion. If you have any questions and things bubble up, I want to make you a part of it. So that's how you can do it. You can also support the show today by sharing this out if you're listening on the podcast. And if you want more of these conversations, you want more of these topics or things I haven't hit on, how you can do that is by going over to Apple and Spotify, leaving your reviews and leaving your feedback. And I can pick out topics that are best going to give you more love and guidance. what are we going to be talking about today? So as I alluded to, I'm going to be continuing the chat around the sexual energy and the chakra connection. Today's focus is the heart chakra. I'm going to be talking about the balance of giving and receiving love. We're talking about grief and the ancestral connection, circulation, movement, breath work, angels, inner child, heart space divinity, and so much more. It's going to be very hard for me to keep all of this under an hour, but I'm going to do my best. Before I get into all that goodness, I want to highlight some community love, as I always do here on these shows. As I spoke to a second ago, one of the best ways you can support the show is through reviews. And I like reading these reviews out to really celebrate you for doing such things. This is from the beautiful Starcat Dreamer. Starcat Dreamer says, a magical experience. I was invited to be a guest on the Cosmic Love Antenna. And from the very start, co-creating with Harrison is a magical experience. His energy of loving curiosity blended with an intuitive flow made it a delight to share my stories related to creativity and spirituality. His energy is inviting and encouraging. Anyone listening to this podcast will come away feeling inspired and uplifted. I highly recommend diving deep. Thank you, beautiful Starcat. Love received. And again, if you leave your feedback and reviews, I'll read them out as well and share the love. So with all of that, I want to get into the topic today because there's so much to cover. The heart chakra is within the chakra system, and especially in relation to the topic, the intention today of enhancing your sexual energy. Your heart chakra, in my opinion, my experience, is the place you want to spend your time. If you've listened to the other 3 parts of this series, we hit on the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. So we've been making our way up. And now today we are focusing in on the heart. And the heart is important for a few reasons in relation to your sexual energy. One of the reasons, as they all are, is that the chakras are a bridge between your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. So when we set the intention of sexual energy expansion, your chakras are the beautiful portal into bringing more of yourself forward. And we all want to do that within our sexual expansion, either with ourselves or with a partner. But the other sort of summarized reason here why the heart chakra is important on the road to your sexual energy abundance in many ways, sexual energy expression, is that the heart is a gateway between this 3D human that you are and the spiritual essence that you are, the spiritual soul that you are. And I'm going to speak about this in many ways today, but I want you to keep that on your heart as we talk about the heart. The heart is so much more than an organ. It is so much more than a place where we feel the feelings. It's so much more than even a chakra. We're going to talk about it as a chakra today, but it's so much more than that. Okay, so just keep that in your awareness as I break down some tips and some guidance here today. I would highly recommend you go back and listen to the first 3 parts of this series, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, because they all add into each other, right? From physical needs to the emotional balance of the sacral to the ego values and identity. They all flow. So I'll put them in the show notes, the different parts, and I'd recommend you go back and listen to them before this part today. So with that preamble and with that foundation, welcome all the lovely souls joining in the Facebook. Cara, Christy, Suzanne, I see you there, my friend. Welcome. With all of that, I want to dive straight in now into some tips, some practices, some awareness around your heart chakra and your sexual energy. And a reminder that all of the sexual activities and insights we can do with ourselves in our own sexual pleasure and play, and then also with a partner, right? It's not exclusive. This is an and game, not an or game. The first key here, the first tip and role with the heart chakra and your sexual expansion is giving and receiving. The balance of giving and receiving. This is the role of the heart chakra in many ways. It is the divine balance between giving and receiving. And it is in every aspect of life, but we're going to speak about it through the sexual energy, sexual healing lens today. So what does this mean? What is this? Why is this balance important? And what can we learn to do? So I'll start with giving. And from a heart chakra lens, we want to learn to give with no attachment or expectation. We want to learn to give with no attachment or expectation. That is balanced giving. As we'll use the sexual act as an example, right? When you're giving pleasure to a partner, you are giving love, ideally, from a space of not attaching or expecting them to do the same. Because as soon as we find ourselves in this arena, then we set ourselves up for what? We set ourselves up for pain. We set ourselves up for suffering. We set ourselves up for that person filling a need that we expect them to fill. So the first step here within the heart chakra and your sexual healing is within the sexual act and the exchange of sexual energy is asking yourself, what do I need to provide myself to be able to give sexual pleasure without attachment, without expectation? And this might seem simple for a lot of you listening, but I'll speak from my own lens that a lot of my giving within the sexual act in my past has come with attachment, has come with expectation. So if you are in my boat, then we must bring awareness to this. And I'll speak to this in this moment. Remember that your awareness of these imbalances in itself can change it, right? The act of observation is an act of creation onto itself. So by observing, releasing, and then making a different choice, we can heal. The other end of the stick is receiving love in this context, receiving loving sexual energy, sexual pleasure, without attachment, without expectation, without feeling like you need to then give something back, without feeling like because you've received the sexual pleasure, now this must mean you must do something for your partner in any way, but let's use the sexual example. So ask yourself, can you fully be in a place of non-attached, non-expectation filled receivership? Again, I'll use me as an example. Many troubles with this, many challenges with this, many stories and beliefs. The people pleaser mask comes in within this dynamic, especially within the bedroom, right? So especially within the sexual energy, because you gave pleasure to your partner, right? And you're now receiving from them. Now you have to keep dancing. Now you have to keep going back. So again, it's asking yourself and bringing awareness around these two ends of the stick. And the balance here is understanding that it's not an or game. Again, it's an and conversation. We can give without attachment expectations, and we can receive without attachment and expectations. And the degree in which we walk this is the degree in which this balance starts to move through us. I'm going to give an example here. I spoke about in the root chakra episode, talk about the 3-minute game. If you didn't hear the episode, I'll just quickly highlight it. 3-minute game is a beautiful, highlights this practice of learning to give the sexual energy without expectation and receive the sexual energy without expectation, right? The 3-minute game is for 3 minutes, you give permission with someone that you feel safe, you feel loved, you feel seen around. You give permission for that person to give you something that they desire. You swap it, you then shift into your partner giving you something for 3 minutes that you desire, right? And then changing roles within this game, within this practice. This is where this balance can be moved through. And I'll add one little tip here, one extra little tip. Observing the stories and the beliefs and the emotions that come up when maybe you feel uncomfortable receiving unconditionally, or maybe when you feel uncomfortable giving unconditionally. Observing the stories that come up, observing the beliefs that come up, observing the emotion that comes up. That in itself can help you come back to balance here. Especially if you're in the container of love with someone. So if you're doing that 3-minute game, right, and let's say that you've asked your partner to give you some pleasure, right? Let's use a very simple, cute example of some kisses on the neck, right? And you're asking to receive those kisses on your neck in full receivership. And in that act, you observe the need to reciprocate. You observe the need to, now I need to give that person that same kiss, that same pleasure. Well, in that moment, you do not have to act. You do not have to give in to that story. Purely observing it, purely allowing yourself to feel it move through you can allow space to make a different choice, can allow you the opportunity to ask yourself the question, right? And this is the question: what would love do in this situation? Would love feel the pressure to reciprocate? Would love feel forced to do the same thing? Or would love just be here receiving for the sake of receiving? Just an example, but we can all apply this to our specific nuances here. Welcome, Helen. I see you there joining in the Facebook chat. All right. So I'm going to flow on here. Actually, one more thing I'll say here about giving and receiving, because it's such a big topic within the heart chakra. Last thing I'll say, I would also give yourself permission to soak up how good it feels. And what I mean by this is many of us have had an imbalance in this giving and receiving for a long time. And because we've been unbalanced, we haven't given ourselves permission to feel the fullest pleasure of either the giving to someone, the giving of sexual pleasure, or the receiving of the sexual pleasure. We don't give ourselves permission to feel the extent of the pleasure, the extent of the desire that's moving through us. So the last thing I'll say here with giving and receiving is give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to fully receive the love. Give yourself permission to fully give the love. Right? And ask yourself, how much of your heart is in it? Is it half your heart? Are you just doing it again for the sake of expectations and attachment? Just this permission too can bring awareness, can bring shifts and change. All right. Let's keep it going. Welcome, Ali. I see you joining. A quick little reset for the people watching live. If you have questions, comments, things bubble up from these elements today, remember, you can add them into the comment section. If you have questions that come up, I'll add them into the show as well. Okay. So next up here within the heart chakra and the themes of the heart and sexual energy, just reading your comment, Kara, I feel that this is a language that is spoken between one another. Yes, to enjoy it and release together, feeling the physical and emotional being. Yeah, exactly, Kara. It's that full holistic nature of us, right? So next up here within the heart chakra and your sexual energy, the next theme I want to hit on and some practices around it is the emotion of grief and sadness. Okay, if you've been listening to the other episodes, I've been sharing that each chakra has a resonance with a particular emotion, right? This is not exclusive. Emotions can be a full body experience. But in my experience, each chakra has a particular resonance to a certain set, right? For the solar plexus, it was anger. For the sacral, it was guilt and shame. Now we're talking about, with the heart, we're talking about grief and sadness. The reason that this is relevant to your sexual energy, your sexual connection, is that if we're looking to add our heart into the sexual act, which, plot twist, that's what we want, that's the goal, then that is going to be difficult if we are holding onto a lot of suppressed grief and sadness in the heart. Okay, so what I'm saying here in many ways is the key to expanding your heart in the sexual energy interaction. One of the keys is learning to release, feel, acknowledge, and move through the repressed grief and sadness that you have. Okay, so just that alone is going to help. The awareness of that, doing that grief and sadness work. Okay. However, there's an extra little lens here that I want to bring your attention to. And this lens around grief and the heart is the ancestral lens. Is, put simply, the grief in your heart that is suppressed may not be yours. It may not originate from you. It may originate either, again, down your mother line, usually in the form of grief around betrayal or not asking for the love that's needed, right? Going back to the balance, right? A lot of grief around not feeling like they can ask for the love, like feeling to receive, right? Not being voiceless in many ways down the mother line. And then down the father line, over giving of the love, right? Giving too much, over caretaking, over providing, overdoing. So I sprinkle these in within the grief relation to the heart. So when you start to move through the grief in the heart space and you're confused around, wait, I haven't had these experiences. I don't know where this grief is from. This is confusing me. To move through that confusion, take in this ancestral lens, right? And ask yourself, what is my mother's relationship to not asking for the love that she deserves? And maybe a betrayal wound. Asking yourself, what is my father's relationship in giving too much love, right? And not allowing to receive. The over caretaking role, the over caretaking archetype. Because if we can do this within the heart and we can tune into that flare of the grief, then now we become that beautiful ancestral breaker of chains, right? We feel the grief. We can bring in the support, right? You could do an ancestral meditation as an example. It's in my new book if people are interested. And break that, release that grief in the heart space, right? Let it go. The reason that this is really relevant, and good morning, Helen, I see your comment. Olivia and Sophie love watching you. I love them watching me, Helen. Give them some love from my heart. So the reason that this grief is important, just to one more little piece here, is the flow of the chakras, right? As we're opening up to our sexual interaction, our creative sexual energy, the flow goes up. Right? So it moves up from our root, our sacral, our solar plexus, now in our heart, and hopefully up into our higher chakras, our higher awareness. If that grief is there, then that grief acts as a block acts as a roadblock in many ways. So it's important to do all the things that you deserve to do to release that grief and give yourself permission to feel all the feelings. We talked about tears in the sacral, right? This is where the emotional balance comes in. This is where reminding yourself that in your tears, in your expression of this grief, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are divine. There is no weakness. So hold that in your heart as you move through the grief. Okay, so let's move on. Next one here, some tips and some insights around the heart space and your sexual energy. The heart chakra. So remember, the chakras are a bridge between your emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical body. So this next tool, practice understanding here to expand your sexual energy through the heart chakra is understanding the heart's role in circulation. Circulation, and I'm going to expand this, not just circulation of the blood, but circulation of the lymph system, the lymphatic system. And for people that don't know what that is, the lymphatic system, put very simply, is the drainage system in your body. It's the system that allows you to move all of the shit physically, energetically, emotionally, mentally out of your system. Right? It's the physical flow of detox in many ways. The heart chakra governs this from many different angles. Right? I'm going to give some practices, because if we're looking to expand and connect through our sexual energy, the degree in which our circulation, the degree in which our flow and release of shit, both figuratively and metaphorically, will impact that sexual energy and that love flow. Okay, so it's very interesting. It's very important to work with this. Okay, and I'm going to give some tips, practices. Okay, so the first one is something I've already spoken about in relation to the practice of yin yoga, right? Yin yoga, no surprise here, you can use to activate and expand and balance all of the chakra centers. But doing a yin practice specifically centered around the heart chakra, centered around circulation in the lymph with specific asanas, will support you. Right, so finding a teacher, either myself or someone that you know, to do that practice, right, with that intention. The second tip I would give here around circulation is learning to make love to a foam roller or a exercise roller, a roller that you would have to stretch out your muscles. This is a practice that I do every morning, and I'd highly recommend you implement it in your own flow. It's buying a roller, get this from any sort of exercise store, any sort of gym store, and hitting 3 different areas. And I'm going to explain these areas of your body. The first area is your bum, your buttocks area, the area of your lower root center, right? Specifically the muscles, the glute muscles, right? The glute muscles have a really have a habit of holding on to a lot of this lymph drainage, and because of the muscles are so large for most of us, they hold on to a lot of tension. So getting into a lymph practice with the roller, hitting the muscles of the glutes first. Second is the sides of your ribs, right? Your side body at large, but specifically the rib section. So doing a rolling practice on the sides in between the ribs, right? For 2 reasons here. Firstly is most of your lymphatic system, big part of it is in this region of the body, down the side body. And most of us, myself included, we don't pay enough attention to the side body. So adding in a foam rolling routine on top of the glutes, right, hitting these sides, is powerful. The other reason you want to hit the ribs is because we have fascia in our entire body, but there's fascia between the rib lines, between each of the ribs. And when we hit that whole system, we're allowing that lymph and circulation to flow. Okay. And then the third part to do with the rolling is your upper back, right? The upper shoulder blade area, the whole upper back area. And again, many reasons for this, but the one I want to bring your attention to, and this will impact the sexual dynamic in many ways, is most of us are spending time doing what? On our phones, with our shoulders hunched forward, right? With our scapula and the upper areas of our torso in a contracted state, right? When we add in the foam roller and we open up that area, we expand, right? In regards to the heart chakra, coming back to it now, and the sexual energy, there is a difference between the frequency of love that we expand in a contracted state versus the frequency of love that we share and expand into when we open. So just this simple foam rolling exercise expands that field. Okay, just a reminder here. Your body keeps score. Your body tells the story of your life. So the degree in which your body is in a contracted state is the degree in which your energetic expression is also contracted. So remember that your physiology is your spiritual energy, is your essence, is your emotional and mental expression. So when we're looking to set the intention of sexual energy connection, the body can help us lean into that. The last circulation tip here I want to give around all of this is the practice of hanging and being upside down. And in regards to circulation, the heart chakra, and your sexual energy, the reason that this is important is, again, we want the flow to move, right? We want the flow of not just blood and the lymph system, but we want energy to be flowing, right? Remember, what is the main role of the heart chakra? It is the giving and receiving of love. How is that giving and receiving moving? It's moving through flow. So the simple practice of hanging upside down, whether this be, I do this on gymnastic rings, but you could do some handstands, you could do it up against a wall, whatever you feel comfortable with, right? There are hanging boards that you can buy now, many different ways to do this. But simply adding in a practice of hanging upside down within your daily routine now brings this flow, now adds in the circulation, adds in the lymphatic drainage. Another little extra benefit, coming back to the sacral center, is when we hang upside down, we also allow that lower back to release. We allow that lower back to open. So yeah, many reasons we could add this in here, but just adding in that hanging upside down as a practice to expand that flow, to bring some balance, I've noticed in my own journey really is beneficial. So add that into your practice. Yeah, Ali, the inversion table. So the inversion table is the name I was trying to think of, tables you can buy now to do that. Right. And I'll say one more thing here before we move on to the next tool and tip, is coming back to the sexual act. And this is not just a male erection thing. It's definitely that, right? I talked about in the solar plexus center around, blood flow being important. Now in the heart, this is not just a male tissue erection consideration. This is blood flow in all tissues. Okay, so just that physiological lens the more blood can flow to the regions of sexual anatomy, the more sensitivity, the more pleasure, the more time we add into the sexual act. So if you needed another reason, start hanging upside down. All right, let's move on. Next up here, another tool tip, heart chakra, sexual energy connection, is I'm going to give some breathwork practices here. So I've been giving some breathwork tools and techniques for each of the chakra centers here within this sexual energy series. And the next is for the heart. Okay. And this practice it's quite powerful if you can get a facilitator to help you do this, but just adding it in as your own personal practice, I've noticed some bigger shifts within the heart. So I'm going to give a bit of explanation here. The breath practice I want to sort of share around is called effigy breath. And I'm going to put this episode in the show notes. I had a whole specific episode just on this breathwork practice with Sarah from Effigy Breath. And we talked about its power and its impact on the heart and all the things. So if you're interested, definitely go back and listen to the whole episode. But I'm going to give an example of what the breath looks like, and then I'm going to break it down. Okay. So what the breath is, it's a focus in on the chest and the heart rather than on the belly and that lower region, which most breath work is. And it's also focused in on the mouth rather than the nose. So what it looks like is this. So it's a bit stimulating in itself already, but the practice, that is the effigy breath. And there are some different pieces of it that I want to pull out and explain here. First is the emphasis on the chest, on the heart specifically. Belly breath is rejuvenating, healing, energizing in many ways. And this is not an or conversation. This is an and. We want to practice all these types of breath work. But when we focus in on the chest and the heart in the style that I just showed you, something interesting happens from a physiological lens, but also a emotional, energetic, and spiritual lens. The first is we go into a very sympathetic state. And for people that are new to that word, what that means is we go into a stress state. We go into a fight or flight state. We go into a hypervigilant state. And for many of us, myself included, this can bring up a lot of things. This can bring up a lot of unseen shadows. This can bring up a lot of stress. And in the long term, we don't want this, right? Because in the long term, this leads to adrenal fatigue. In the long term, this leads to stress, chronic disease, all the things we don't want. But in the short-term experience of doing this kind of breath work in this sympathetic style, it gives us an opportunity, especially if we're bringing in the heart chakra, which we are doing. It brings us the opportunity to break through fear. It brings us the opportunity to break through thought patterns. It brings us the opportunity to break through illusions that are keeping us in limitation. Because that sympathetic style of breath work, it will bring up from the unconscious into conscious awareness things that are painful, that are causing tension in your life. But it is in that moment, especially if you're doing this breath work with a practitioner that can hold the space and you continue with it, you get to surrender through it. You get to break through it. You get to release the chains of pain and separation and break through it back into what? Break through it back into love. Break through back into peace. Break break through it back into bliss. So that's the first side of this breath that I really just want to bring your attention to. Okay. And I would recommend the long-term, like a normal session would go for an hour, right, with a practitioner. I would recommend not doing that all the time, right? It's a once and every now and then experience. But when you do it, you open up the opportunity to experience what you actually are. And what you actually are is a being of love, bliss, and unboundedness. And those fears and pains and illusions are stopping you from experiencing that. And this breath through the heart can help you see that. Within the sexual act, you can see how many of these illusions and these pains and these traumas are stopping you from connecting either sexually to yourself or your partner. So this is why that breath can support that. The other side of this breath that I just want to highlight here in relation to the sexual energy. I just want to welcome Jenna, welcome my friend. Just reading your comment. This isn't an or conversation. This is an and conversation. Yeah. Happy it's resonating and applies heavily to a lot of things we've talked about today. But going back to this breath, this effigy breath, you tell me, what does that breath simulate? Where else would that type of breath flow show up? Well, how I answer that question is in the sexual act with a partner, in the sexual act with someone. So this is also why this breath practice can be powerful within the heart and your sexual energy, because it starts to stimulate this sexual energy through the breath. This is so significant because, again, I'll use me as an example. I grew up as a male that stimulated my sexual energy with outside things, right? Whether it be porn, whether it be, just partners themselves, whether it be codependent relationships. I was dependent on those external elements to stimulate the sexual energy within. Where in reality, if you've been following this series, all of these practices can help you come back to the reminder that that energy is inside of you and you can stimulate it. And this breath becomes another example of that. So when you set the intention of connecting to your sexual energy through your heart and now adding in this breathwork practice, you now create the container for it to flow. And adding in a partner, that's a bonus, right? That's a little cherry on top. So try it out. Let me know how it goes. And as someone who's experimented with this, there's a lot of goodness here. There's a lot of opportunity. So I will just add a disclaimer before we move on. Because that breath work is very sympathetic, please take it slowly, right? Because it can bring up a lot of stuff. Please take it slowly, right? As a practitioner, it would be very unethical for me to not put that disclaimer. So just take it slowly, work with someone if you are concerned. All right, let's move on here. Just a little reminder for people joining live. I see you. I love you. I appreciate you. If you have comments, questions, and things that bubble up, add them into the comments section on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and I will add them into the show. All right. So just checking the time and the things I have left to speak about. So next up here is angels. And this might seem like a bit left field, but it's not. Let me explain. So when we are having a conversation around the heart, any conversation around the heart chakra, but within this sexual conversation today, it would behoove us and it would be in our favor to consider the world of angels. And the reason I bring this up is because angels, as both something that you can experience outside of you coming into your field, as an outside angel entity, or, and I'll speak about this more at the end, but the angelic frequency that you have within you, this is not just a woo-woo thing that you do with your spiritual friends or in your healing sessions or in your spiritual practices. It is all those things. But there's nothing stopping you, and this is what I'm encouraging you to do, to connect to angelic consciousness, again, either external coming in or your own angelic consciousness in your sexual interactions, in your sexual energy, either with yourself or with a partner. And this is why. The angelic consciousness is one of service, is one of devotion, is one of unconditional love in many ways. Okay, again, I want to make this distinction here. I want to make this very clear. This is angels that are coming into your realm, into your energetic field, or the angelic consciousness that you are, that you express. It both has these characteristics: devotion, service, unconditional love. Let me ask you a question. Are those traits, are those characteristics something you wish to have or wish to sprinkle into your sexual energy interactions? I answer that yes. How I answer that question is yes. And I'm sure many of you would also answer that same question with a yes. So this is why. This is why we want to bring in angelic consciousness into our sexual interaction, into our sexual energy exploration, because it adds these characteristics. It adds the devotion, it adds the service, it adds the unconditional love, right? Going back to what I spoke about at the start of this conversation, the balance between giving and receiving. One of the things that's going to help you with that balance is this angelic consciousness, either inviting in outside angels to support you with a sexual act, with a sexual interaction, relationship, etc. Or, and I would actually say this is more important, and I'll speak about this again at the end, but inviting in your own angelic consciousness, the angelic consciousness that is you, right? That your subtle energy body that is angelic, right? Inviting that in to the sexual act, right? Inviting it into, let's get super specific, right? Let's say your partner has asked you to share pleasure, sexual pleasure, right? Oral, physical, whatever it is. One way that you could optimize and enhance and make sure that there is this frequency of love within that act is calling to your own angelic consciousness. The consciousness that is you, that shows up in service. Service to what? Service to your partner. Service with no attachment. Service with no expectation. Service for the fact of service, for the fact of love. So I'll land that there, because there's a lot I could speak about with this, and I'll put episodes, show notes I've done on angelic consciousness in the show notes. Actually, at the time of this live recording, the people watching live, there's an angel episode dropping today on the show, so watch out for that. But just, I'd encourage you to incorporate this into your sexual energy, okay, to optimize it. Okay, next up here is the inner child. This would not be a chakra episode if I didn't add in the inner child, as I've done with all the other chakras. So the inner child in relation to your sexual energy and your heart chakra, one of the things it governs, and for you to be aware of, is the inner child need, right? Again, I've spoken about these before in my inner child episodes. There are a set of core inner child needs that we need to meet, either have met growing up or we now meet as the parent of our inner child, right? The core inner child need that connects to your heart and this sexual energy is the need of the opportunity to grieve and grow. The opportunity to grieve and grow. Again, I'm going to highlight what this is, what this looks like, and connect it here. So this need is just have in your mind's eye the child growing up, the physical child that fell down, hurt themselves, started crying, and then the parent came over, created the space to hold the child, and then the child did what? The child grieved and grew from the pain, from the space, from the love. Okay, that's the core inner child need. And ideally, as children growing up, we want that need to be met by our caregivers. Unfortunately, most of us did not have that need met. And either we were told to shut up, we were told that boys don't cry, we were told that you're too much. If you're in the female body, you were told you're too much in your tears, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, right? All these things. So this need, this core inner child need, was not met, was suppressed. And now, as adults, within that heart space, remember, where does grief hold itself? In the heart. Now this inner child need of not being able to grieve, it's up to us to meet that. It's up to us to release the grief from the heart, connected to our inner child, so the sexual energy can start to flow. So this is not a block for us. So this is not a projection in our romantic relationships, in our sexual relationships. So put simply, again, I'm just going to reiterate, the awareness of this need in itself might shift and allow you to release, to grieve. But how do we practically meet this need? Well, you either create the container for yourself to connect to this grief around a painful experience that you needed to express around. So you create the container for yourself and then just allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to grieve and grow. Or again, coming back to the 3-minute game, or someone else creating a container for you, allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to be held in someone else's love, romantic love, sexual love, to grieve and grow, using their energy, their container, to meet this need for yourself. Okay. And this could be the start or the end of your sexual exploration, the sexual act. This could be the way that it comes up. And it's up to you to not judge that, to not suppress that, but to lean into it, to see that it is the key, that it is the way forward. Because it's not just coming up for no reason. It's not just there to bug you. It's not just there to remind you of how broken you are. It's none of those things. It's there because it deserves your attention. And that need deserves to be met. Right? And I'll share my favorite inner child quote. It's in my book if you're reading it. It relates to this. Right? It's from Alice Little. As traumatized children, we always wished someone would come and save us. We never imagined it would be us as adults. And that is you in this moment, either for yourself or in the intimate container that someone makes for you to then do that for yourself. All right. I hope that one resonates and lands. That's a big one in itself. So I hope you take many things away from this conversation today, but if you just do that practice, you'll notice a lot of healing expansion. How much time do we have left? All right. I wasn't lying, I promised. There was so much in this heart chakra to talk about. And the last point here, I'm going to try and keep it concise because, again, there's so much we could speak about. But coming back to our intention, heart chakra and your sexual energy, the last theme, the last practice to hit on here today is, and Jenna, I see your comment. Ali, I see your comment too. Ali says such a beautiful quote. Jenna, I'm a chronic space holder for others to grieve and grow, and I have resisted others meeting my needs in this way. Yeah, Jenna, so you're not alone in that, right? The superhero archetype is a real thing. Right? It's so easy for us to do that for other people, but then when we want to receive, this is the other end of the stick that deserves equal attention and love. Which is why the main role of the heart chakra is the balance of that, balance of the giving and receiving, like I spoke about at the start. Okay, last topic here, last theme of the heart chakra. And I'm trying to contain myself because this little theme is not a little theme. It is the theme, in my opinion. It's the theme of not just the heart, but why we're doing all of this work to begin with. And it is the theme, if you're reading my book, one of the last chapters of my book is your loving divinity. And it is the understanding and acknowledgement that when we start to do heart chakra work, in this instance through the sexual energy lens and intention, we will inevitably come back to the truth and the understanding and the remembering that through our heart portal, we see and feel and start to embody the divine presence of love that we are. We are a multidimensional being of love and light that has a source of divinity, that has a source of God, that has a source of infinite creation power, infinite, if you want to call it, infinite sexual creative power, all the things. And the reason I'm pinpointing this is it is through the heart portal that we will start to experience this. This will start to be a symptom. It's funny. It's funny to call it that, but this will be a symptom of the heart work that you do. You will start to remember that you are an infinite, divine source, a being of source. I spoke about in the solar plexus episode at the very end, the twin flame exercise in your heart temple. Your heart temple in your heart chakra is where this divine source lives. So this is another meditation here that we can do. We can venture into this heart temple, say that we have an intention of expanding our sexual energy through our heart chakra. We can venture into the heart temple, connect to this divine source that lives in that heart temple in our heart, and ask it for guidance. Ask it for wisdom. Like, let's get super specific. Let's say that within the sexual act, you're having trouble opening your heart to your partner, or you're having trouble receiving, like Jenna's example. You're having trouble receiving sexually. Well, you can enter into meditation, enter into that heart temple, call in your divine presence, your divine seed of love that you are, and receive guidance. Receive the answer that you're looking for. Because it's there. It's not outside of you. It's not in some external cloud. It's in you. Specifically, it's in your heart. It's in your heart temple. It's in that divine source. So ask, go there, cultivate this practice. This applies to all of the sexual intentions that you will have. You deserve to have them all met, but you can ask for how are they going to be met, right? Your inner knowing is there. But this is another important thing to really understand here, is that your spiritual essence, your spiritual body, this divine essence that you are, that I'm speaking about, it will never force itself on you, right? This is why we have a Saturn returns. This is why we have this option to step into our awakening. It's because we have free will and divine will for a reason. Right? Divine will is this source, is this divinity that we are. But that divine will, it respects our free will. So we must use our free will to open up to divine will. We must make the choice, i.e., do the meditations, i.e., ask for the guidance, i.e., allow ourselves to feel what we are. Because until we do that, we're not judged. There's no expectation. But until we make that choice, it won't force itself on us. It won't come through because it respects the balance. So this practice is immeasurable in its impact on your life, not just sexually within this context, but in all the ways. And I want to speak about one more thing here within this, and I'm going to try and keep it short. And Jenna, I see your question, and I'll end with all. So actually, no, because it actually connects to what I want to share. Beautiful timing. So when calling in your angelic consciousness, is this the same as calling up on your divine will or your divine presence? So good question. So this connects to what I want to speak about here. Okay, so I'll answer your question, Jenna, by explaining this last little practice. You are, as I said, with the angelic consciousness, because I'm going to tie that back into this now. You are a multidimensional being of love and light. What does that multidimensional piece mean? I'm going to use the analogy of the Russian doll, right? The Russian doll that we've all understood in our mind. Maybe we have them. That is us. That Russian doll with the little piece that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That is our multidimensional nature. Okay. In many ways, those doll layers are our energy bodies, are the frequencies of ourself, right? They are the dimensions of us. Okay. So we have different energy bodies, different dimensions, different frequencies of self, right? We have the physical. These are just examples, right? There are many, I'm going to give some examples. We have the physical, we have the mental, we have the emotional, depending on the worldview. We have the etheric, we have the causal, right? Many, okay? The angelic consciousness that we are, that I spoke about before, is one of them, is one of the higher ones, one of the larger ones. We also have Christed. We have the Christ consciousness, that is us. That's another one. So angelic, Christed. But then one of the top layers is this divine presence, is this Buddhic consciousness that some people might be familiar with. Another name is this divine layer, is this oneness layer, is the layer. It's when we pull all of them back, when the source comes all the way back, it's the final level, if you want to use that analogy. So that's the difference, Jenna, to your question. And it's just radio stations. Another example here. It's radio stations of frequency. And the divine presence that we are, the divine will, the divine source that's in that heart space is the most expansive one, is the one that has all the answers, is the one that is the source that we stem from. Okay, so trying my best here to concise this down into very simple terms, but hopefully that lands for people listening and for you, Jenna. This, and we can call to this. Okay, we can call to these different dimensions of self to embody in any given moment, bring it back to the sexual act and sexual energy, to embody them, express them, share them, ask for guidance, do all the things. Okay. Jenna, your comment, so each level fits effortlessly and harmoniously within each other. Yes, exactly. Yep. And I'll say one more thing to this. 333, Ali. Yep. I'll say one more thing to this. The sooner that we can open up to our multidimensional nature and accept it and embrace it, call to it, the heart temple exercise, some of the other stuff I've talked about today, not just within our sexual energy and our relationships, but in all facets of life, the sooner we can do that, the sooner our life starts to flow. It starts to move with divine will, starts to move with purpose, starts to move with passion. We start to awaken our gifts. We start to remember our purpose for being here. Because it's that multidimensional nature that holds all of the answers. All right. I'm going to land it there. I'm going to just hold back from speaking more about this because I want to be mindful of time. And I also want to be mindful that this episode, once again, has been full of tools and practices. So I'm going to end, as I always do, with an encouragement. Feel all these things today, but take action. Go take action on one of the things we've talked about, whether it's the breath, whether it's the circulation hanging upside down, whether it's that heart temple, whether it's the grief, whether it's the giving and receiving. Add these into your sexual energy exchange, either with yourself or with your partner, and let me know how it goes. Leave it in your reviews, leave it in your comments. If you are looking to do this kind of work one-on-one, you need support with this kind of stuff, this is my jam. This is what I do for a living as a mentor and a coach. So the support is there. But until then, you have these episodes, you have this guidance, and catch me in the next one. The next one will be the throat chakra, which, if you're a fan of this episode, of this podcast and these episodes, I have a lot to say on that one too. So come back for that. But until then, thank you for everyone for joining live. I send you love. I send you light. And I'll see you again very soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna with me, your host, Harrison. If you gained value or this episode hit your heart, please remember to share this out with a friend, a family member, or a lover. You can also leave your love over on Apple reviews and Spotify star feedback, and this helps me spread my frequency to more souls in need. Finally, if you want to connect with me deeper, want to reach out, interested in coaching, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Harrison Meagher, spelled Meagher. Sending you so much love.